Hey, and welcome to Capital City Sports, your home for the Carolina Gamecocks. I'm Ed Cahill.
And I'm Taniqua Penix.
Taniqua, why don't you tell us what's coming up on this week's show?
Well, Ed, this week we want to allow men and women's tennis to make their debut on Capital City Sports. But that's not all we have.
That's right, Taniqua. The women's basketball team had a pair of conference matches last week as they hosted Florida at home and then hit the road to take on the Tennessee Lady Vols.
We'll also check in with the guys in the boardroom as they discuss all the big topics surrounding USC sports.
But first, the red-hot men's basketball team hit the road as they took on 24th ranked Tennessee.
That's right, Ed. The Gamecocks arrived in Knoxville winning 3 of their past 4 games, while the Vols were still reeling from a loss to Kentucky earlier this week.
Let's send it over to Jared Munch for all the highlights.
Devin Downey and crew up in Knoxville to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee coming off a huge loss to Kentucky earlier in the week. See if Carolina can capitalize. Brandis Raley-Ross drives but can't get it to fall. Mike Holmes, on the other hand, does. Then Tyler Smith, all in one motion, catches and passes to Brian Williams for the huge dunk. Here's the reverse angle on it. And then the speed of Tennessee in that transition game would show itself. And the Gamecocks had trouble. Here is Cameron Tatum with a nice layup. And if you don't believe me yet, Scotty Hobson taking the pass and rocking the rim. The Gamecocks trying to stay in it. Devin Downey here getting the steal. That's just what he does, and taking it back for an easy 2. Then Mike Holmes on the inbound, quick spin move, and finding the basket. And Gamecocks are trying to make a comeback, but Cameron Tatum, 4-3, knocks it down, and that's the end of that. Downey would answer with this off-balance layup, and then the 6'7" Dominique Archie stepping outside behind the line for 3. He's been doing that a lot lately, but Brian Williams here, he is not quite as good at shooting the 3 apparently. Then Scotty Hobson cleans it up. Tennessee leading 43-28 at halftime. Coming out after the break, Dominique Archie would have 19 points on the game, but those were not 2 of them. Downey, right place, right time though, finds the net. Then he pulls up for 3 on the next possession for the Gamecocks. Then Bobby Mays feeds it to Cameron Tatum, and that is one high percentage shot. Downey here, sweet crossover. I think LeBron calls that a crab dribble, but that's 2 points nonetheless. Then feeding it to Mike Holmes for the two-handed jam. Now watch this on the inbound. Zam Frederick's going to get the steal, step behind the line, and knock it down for 3. It would not be enough. Gamecocks falling 82-79. To see how the women's fared against the Lady Volunteers, we'll send it over to Cameron Weiderman. I'm Jared Munch, Capital City Sports.
2 of the best coaches in women's college basketball going head-to-head in this one. Our own Dawn Staley in her first season, and Pat Summitt, she seems like she's been there forever. The all-time winningest coach at Tennessee. Simone Kennedy's going to get the scoring started. Here she makes a nice drive to the lane, 4-2. But this game was all about Brianna Dickerson. Here, Simone Kennedy's going to give her the assist, and the 3-point drains it. That's just one of her many on the night. Another one comes right here from just about the same spot on the court. 4-3, she drains it. And do I even need to say it again this time? Kennedy, Dickerson, 4-3, drains it. Brianna Dickerson would finish the night with a team-high 17 points. A couple plays later, Demetrius Adams is going to get this ball underneath the basket. She's going to finish here for a tough 2. And Pat Summitt not happy about that, wondering what's going on. She's looking around, looking for some help from somebody. Gamecocks are up 16-9 at that point until Sammy Bogg goes across the lane. The little running J there for 2. Demetrius Adams at the other end. She did some work in the paint tonight. This time the spin finished as she's falling down. A great play by the senior leader, Demetrius Adams. Lakeisha Sutton's going to get on the act, knocking down that 3-pointer, but she's not going to be outdone by Brianna Dickerson. Her 4th 3 of the night. She was on fire from outside. This time, she's actually going to miss the 3. Eventually, he's going to end up with the ball again, and why shoot from all the way out there when you can get the easy lay-in? Tennessee mounted a comeback and actually took the lead into the half after a slow start. Pat Summitt still probably was not happy, and she lit a fire under her team. Here, Glory Johnson finishes with 2 of her 7 on the night. The Vols got their largest lead to 16 at one point. Here, Demetrius Adams is going to get the big offensive rebound and just bully her way to 2. Adams scored 9 points on the night and recorded 8 rebounds. Lakeisha Sutton is going to cut this deficit to 7 here with this outside shot, 4-3. That gets the Gamecock bench fired up, trying to come back here on the Vols, but it was just too much. Tennessee goes on to win this one by a score of 68-56. Game 1 of the Staley Summit Showdown goes to Summit. I'm Cameron Weiderman for Capital City Sports.
Now for more on the men's basketball team, let's send it over to Corey Burkhardt in the boardroom.
All right, thank you, Taniqua, and welcome into the boardroom here on Capital City Sports. I'm Corey Burkhardt, being joined by this guy. He's Michael Aguilar, sports editor for the Daily Gamecock. Ags, thank you for being with us this week.
Thanks for having me, Burke.
Now our second week of our 5th season of Capital City Sports, also marked by what I consider to be the second biggest story of the week, President Obama, his inauguration. Obviously, that doesn't trump us being in our 5th season, but Ags, I mean, President 44, an African-American, obviously a big step for the country, right?
It's a big deal. Everybody's excited. I mean, it's a good time to be an American.
Okay, I'll tell you what, it ain't a very good time to be a Gamecock fan right now. If you've been following this basketball team after the heartbreaking loss they had in Tennessee. Ags, first of all, just give us your thoughts on that game.
I mean, it's terrible to see Carolina come so close over and over again and just not be able to finish out the game. And that's what you saw again against Tennessee. You saw a Tennessee team that got up on Carolina and stayed up, and Carolina made a bid for a comeback but just fell short at the very end of the game.
If you go through that game, there was one point when Carolina was down pretty big, I mean huge in fact, and they came back in the second half, made it a game. I mean, they took it down right to the wire, frankly, had a chance to tie it, but they let that slip away. I mean, what's going on? This team seems to be playing at some points, other points they're missing on all cylinders. I mean, what's going on?
I mean, the thing that you have to focus on is that the perimeter game is so important for Carolina. And my dad likes to say, if you live by the jump shot, you die by the jump shot. College basketball teams are going to get hot and they're going to get cold, and as long as the perimeter game is so important for Carolina, you're going to see those times where Carolina's hot and where Carolina's cold, and you saw that in the first half against Tennessee, and then you saw Carolina get hot in the second half and make a bid for a comeback. But once again, it's just too little too late. They've got to develop an inside game.
Coach Horn, if you're him, I mean, what are you thinking right now? Your team's now 1-2 in conference play. You got beat pretty single-handedly by LSU, but that loss didn't look so bad because a couple of days later they completely blew out Ole Miss. So if you're Coach Horn, I mean, what are your thoughts right now?
You're certainly not hitting the panic button yet. I mean, Horn's only had just about 15 games to implement his system, only 3 games in the conference. He's never coached in a conference like the SEC before. So you just got to give your style time, you got to give your game plan time to develop, and you've got to see what your players are capable of. I mean, he's still getting to know these players. He's only been here for less than a year. So you're certainly not hitting the panic button, but you're trying to get things going. You're trying to give the players some extra motivation at this point.
Outside of Devin Downey, obviously a great leader for this team, I mean, are there any of these other players that have really stepped up and shown that they're ready to be a number 2 guy on this team and help lead us? Or
I mean, you gotta love Zam Frederick. He's scoring a lot of points for the team, and he's shown that he's capable of being the man when the Gamecocks need him to be the man, but he's definitely gonna have to step up his game to be a consistent number 2 guy, and it really hurts that he's out right now, or at least questionable for the Florida game coming up. But he's a guy that can score from almost anywhere on the floor and has the experience playing at a high level of basketball that a lot of these players lack.
Okay, well, that's going to do it right now. We just covered the men's basketball team. We're going to come back later in the show. Ag's going to take a quick break. He's going to go inside and get warm. I'm going to be joined by Brian Walker and Justin Fabiano. We're going to talk about some sports here in the next blocks. You're going to come back. We're going to talk some women's basketball later in the show, so stick around and we'll see you in a bit.
Coming up after the break, the women's basketball team hosted the Florida Gators at the Colonial Life Arena. But next, we have a triple header of tennis coverage as the men's and women's team were at home over the weekend. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Both the men's and women's tennis teams were at home over the weekend, and Capital City Sports has you covered on all the action. Let's send over to Mike Wadsworth as we begin our coverage.
The number 33 women's tennis team kicked off their season against number 47 BYU. And quickly with how this works before we get started, each team has 6 players Their first is the doubles matches, where it's a first to win 8 games, a win by 2 rule, and then the singles matches, where it's a best of 3 sets, first to win 6 games, wins each set, and it is also a win by 2 rule. So after warming up, head coach Arlo Elkins and his ladies are ready to go. And first was the doubles matches, where USC's first team, Anna Maria Zubori and Natasha Vukovic, led the charge, where the Gamecocks would get out to a 7-1 lead in their first position, 7-2 in the second, and 6-1 in the third. But BYU would lead an incredible comeback and take the first and third positions to get the early doubles lead. It was then on to singles, where 1 point is awarded to the winner of each of the 6 singles matches, making the entire contest a best of 7 event. And USC's Anna Maria Zubori and Vukovic would take care of their matches, and Carolina would take the 3-2 lead. But Susanna Mansour and Ashley Miller, pictured here in warm-ups, took the final 2 for the Gamecocks to capture the 5-2 overall victory over BYU. So after the quick start in doubles, where they would eventually drop the matches, USC bounced back in singles to take 5 of the 6 wins. The victory snapped a 3-game losing streak against BYU. For Capital City Sports, I'm Mike Wadsworth. Now let's see how the men's tennis team opened their season in the first half of a doubleheader versus Wofford.
Men's tennis getting ready for their season opener versus Wofford. Going in, the men were ranked 52nd in the country. The top doubles duo Pedro Campos on the left here and Joe Veter on the right. They had a tough test against Manlow and Robertson of Wofford. Manlow's big ace there, Wofford off to a hot start. Campos would keep SC in the game early, splitting the Terriers on this return. And a little later on, Campos would have the huge overhead slam that was too hot for Robertson to handle. The junior from Brazil has an all-time doubles record of 35 and 32. Joe Veter gets into the act of scoring as well with this beautiful shot down the line. Despite some nice plays, Campos and Veter found themselves down 3-1 early. Coach Kent DeMars getting a little concerned early on. He's in his 24th season as the head coach. Joe Veter's great cross-court backhand changed momentum in this one. Gamecocks starting to mount a comeback. Pedro Campos is going to add a few more with this slice shot that finds its way just barely down the line. Gamecocks tying it up in this match late. Veter now returning the serve, and this one is going to go back and forth until Veter finally says, "Enough of this." The huge forehand ends that game in the Gamecocks' favor. Now Veter's reaction here pretty much sums up the game. Campos and Veter are going to go on to win this one by a score of 9-7. Later on in the day, Diego Cubas took care of business, winning his singles match. Gamecocks would go on to beat Wofford by a score of 6-1 to start off the 2009 season. I'm Cameron Weiderman, and now for more on men's tennis opening their season on Saturday, here's Justin Fabiano.
Thank you, Cameron, and there's nothing better to watch on a Thursday night than some Gamecock tennis. There's men's star Diego Cubas getting ready, taking a couple practice serves because he's about to show the men of Troy what he's made of. Now here's Cubas on the first serve, and that's what we call an ace in the tennis business. Now Branko Weber for Troy tries to do something fancy there, cutting it across, but Cubas is having no part of that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Diego Cubas show. Nice little return right there and a little forehand right here. Weber tries to come back with it, but Diego Cubas says no, and he slams it back down. And like I said, it's the Cubas show. There's a nice serve right there. Coming back with the backhand. We got a little volley. Good video from Taniqua Penix. And right here, Cubas just puts it away. Weber on the serve. He's trying to get some kind of momentum going, but Cubas, well, that's an unforced error. Just Weber didn't know what to do with it, and now Weber trying to make something happen again. Cubas with a strong forehand. He comes back. He reaches, goes off balance, and Weber puts him away there, but it doesn't matter. Cubas wins 6-2, 6-2. USC wins 7-0. For Capital City Sports, I'm Justin Fabiano. All right, welcome back into the boardroom. Ags is inside getting warm, so I'm being joined by executive producer Justin Fabiano and Brian Walker here. We're outside. Guys, let's talk about the baseball team real quickly. The stadium's set to be open in a month when the new team shows up. First of all, Fabs, what's the team going to look like?
Well, last year's team lived and died off the home run. You lost Reese Havens, you lost Justin Smoke, you lost Darnell, and you lost Phil Disher. This team doesn't have that. They have Parker Bangs, they got D'Angelo Mack, Whit Merrifield. These guys are more speed guys. They'll get you power occasionally, but this team's going to have to find a new identity. They're going to have to use their speed, and they're going to have to manufacture a lot more runs than they did last season.
All right. B-Walk, the team this year in preseason rankings, not in the top 25. Now, some have attributed that to a lot of players lost. What are your thoughts on that, and what's going to come of that?
Well, it's going to be uncharted territory for USC baseball. It's kind of a new era. No one can really remember the last time they couldn't be found in the preseason top 25 poll. This is going to be a team that's giving up the power in favor of the small ball. As Justin said, a lot of speeds, manufacture runs in ways that we're really not used to seeing yet. However, we have what many would argue to be one of the better baseball coaches in the country, and I think if anyone can get a different kind of production out of a new crop of players that we haven't seen before, it is Ray Tanner. Not to mention new facility, good for the fans, obviously good for the team and recruits coming in. A program like this is a lot like Southern Cal in football. They don't so much rebuild, they just reload. This year it's just going to be a different kind of player being reloaded.
All right, Fabs, I want to ask you a question. The new stadium now across the bridge, further away from the USC campus. The Sarge, a lot of students like that because they could wake up, walk right to it, and walk right back, but now that's no longer an option. Is the new stadium good in its location, or is it not good?
It's definitely good because it's huge. This stadium's bigger than a lot of single A and double A stadiums. It's probably the nicest facility in the country right now, and I don't think people are going to mind waking up a little earlier just to find a parking space. I mean, season ticket demand exceeded so much that they had to add left field seats. I can't think of any other college stadium that really has left field seats.
B-Walk?
It's a great place. I drove by just the other day with the seats in it now. It is a world-class facility. They spent the time and the money to get it right, and I think it's going to do wonders for the program that was already great in what was probably one of the worst facilities in the SEC. So it can only go up from here because of what they've built.
All right. I think it's going to work. They're going to need to figure out a way to get USC students down to the stadium, whether it be a bus system or something. Now, guys, we're running out of time. Fabs, this is going to be an entire baseball boardroom for tonight. So real quick, I want you to tell me, how far is USC's season going to go into the late spring, early summer?
I think you're going to be looking at a regional, maybe a super regional team. I mean, last year they didn't make it out the super regionals with all that talent that they had at the plate. This year, pitching's going to have to step up, and we're going to see, I think, a regional dropout.
Okay, B-Walk?
I agree with Justin. It's going to be an early bounce from the tournament, although they will make the tournament just based on the strength that they always have out of some of their players. However, it's a young group of guys, so it's going to be much needed experience, and it's going to build towards the future, and that's what fans need to remember when they have what I predict will be an early exit.
All right. Come back next week, guys. We'll do it again?
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, there's going to be a highlight from the Florida women's basketball game. Ags will come back. We'll talk about that. Stick around. We'll see you in a bit.
Coming up after the break, we'll go back into the boardroom as the guys discuss the women's basketball team. But next, the Lady Gamecocks hosted Florida on Thursday night. We have the highlights from that game on the other side of the break. Coach Dawn Staley and the Lady Gamecocks were looking to get their first SEC win of the season on Thursday night as they hosted the Florida Gators. Corey Burkhardt was at the Colonial Life Arena, and he has all the action.
All right, South Carolina at home, 0-2 in SEC play, looking to get a win against number 19 Florida. Little pregame gamesmanship there by the Gators dancing on the Gamecocks logo. That's going to come up later in this highlight. Brianna Dickerson for the Gamecocks, she's going to hit the three early on for Carolina. Gamecocks going to need a big season out of her if they're going to contend down the stretch. Unfortunately tonight, turnovers plagued the home team. Dickerson from three, she missed that. Demetris Adams, she's going to miss the layup right here on the rebound. Unfortunately for the Gamecocks, that's just the way it went. The Gators managed to turn 24 USC turnovers into about 30 points, and that was going to be the telling sign for the Gamecocks. And Coach Staley, after the game, I asked her, Coach, I said, is this a setback for your young team?
You could say it was. It's just because we didn't compete, you know. I just thought that, it wasn't about the traps. It really wasn't about, the Xing and Ong. This was flat out heart. You know, they took our hearts, and you have to explain to our players that either you're going to take somebody's heart or you're going to get your heart taken.
And take their hearts, the Gators did, but the Gamecocks did not give up. Simone Kennedy with the layup. That's a hometown spin. The Gamecocks trailed, unfortunately, big late in this one. Not very competitive. Sherelle Smith's going to hit one of her 2 threes from downtown. Right there, put Florida up, well, by about 20. Simone Kennedy's going to drain 3 of her 11 points right here. And back to Florida dancing on the logo after the game. I asked their coach, was she trying to be disrespectful to the home team?
Oh gosh, no, no, not at all. You know, that's what our team huddles. We huddle all the time. We huddle before the game, after the game, in the locker room, at free throws, and after every game, win or lose, home or away, we huddle. And so, no disrespect meant there at all. That's us being us.
Gators win by 14, and that's your final. Corey Burkhardt, Capital City Sports. All right, welcome back into the boardroom. All right, Ags, you just saw the women's highlight against Florida. First of all, turnovers and points off turnovers are the things that doomed Carolina in that game. 24 turnovers. Florida turned that into about 29 points. So if you're Coach Dawn Staley, obviously the turnovers are your #1 issue, correct?
That could be true, Burke, but I'm going to look at another side of the women's basketball team that is a big issue. And I'm going to put this in terms that even our friends like Brian Walker can understand. The Gamecocks are last in the SEC in scoring offense and scoring defense. You're not going to win games like that. You got to put points up on the board, and you got to play some defense. And that's what the big issue is. It's just the basics for the women's basketball team right now. It's even the most fundamental things that they just can't get right at this point, and they're going to have to correct that to get better.
I think that goes hand in hand with the turnovers issue, because it's like Coach Staley said after the Florida game. You were there. She said, we're not even getting the ball deep enough into a possession to even get a shot off or to get it 2 or 3 passes deep because they're turning it over so fast. I mean, what is it that this team is so turnover prone right now?
The team is lacking consistency. Only 2 players from this team have started every game, and that's Breonna Dickerson and Demetrius Adams. And with that lack of consistency in your starting lineup, you're not going to be able to develop a team chemistry, and you're going to lead to turnovers. You're not going to get a feel for where the other players are on the floor. And so some of these players on this team have to be able to step up. Seniors like CJ Pace have to be able to step up and start playing more consistently so they can be on the floor, so they can start to develop that chemistry.
If you go back to a player, let's say Breonna Dickerson, one thing that I think she's tried to do, and I don't know if this is what she's trying to do over her entire career, but if you watch her play, she throws the ball up a lot from downtown. I'm talking about long 3-pointers, long jump shots that probably she shouldn't be shooting. Unfortunately, most of them are not going in. So if you're Coach Staley, are you frustrated by some of the not well outside shots that are going on, or what?
That's definitely going to frustrate you, and that's something that Coach Staley is going to have to take control of. If your team is not having good shot selection, that's coming down to coaching. You need to tell your players when it's okay to shoot, when it's not okay to shoot, and that's a discussion that maybe the women's team does need to have, is who needs to be shooting the ball and where do they need to be shooting it from the floor.
You also talked about Demetrius Adams. Obviously, she can be a huge presence under the net. Unfortunately, the last several games, even maybe all season long, she hasn't been used, in my opinion, the way she could be used. I think she could post up a lot, drive to the hoop, get some good layups or some rebounds. I mean, shouldn't you be playing to the strengths of a player like Demetrius?
You do have to play to the strengths of a player, but you also want to make sure that you're not putting her in a position where she's going to get double teams and get blocked out more. I mean, a lot of the players from the team are going to have to step up and become threats before you can really use Demetrius Adams to her highest potential, because you put her down there on the blocks, she's all that much more easy to double team and to get a better matchup on for other teams.
All right, women host Vanderbilt at the Colonial Life Arena on Sunday afternoon. Who are you picking?
I'd like to see the women's team pull out an SEC win here. I think that they're capable of beating a team like Vanderbilt if they play on their best game. But at the same time, if we see the mistakes repeating that we've seen thus far in the season, then I don't like the women's team to pull out a victory here.
Who's going to win?
I think the women's team can do it.
So you're picking Carolina?
I'd pick Carolina.
Okay, I'm going to go the other way, pick Vanderbilt, just because we both can't pick the same thing. I love my girls in the Carolina squad. Coach Staley, you know I love you, so prove me wrong on Sunday. That's going to do it for us. We're going to come back next week with the highlights of that game and plenty more. So for Michael Aguilar, I'm Corey Burkharth. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
All right, well, that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next Thursday evening for a brand new episode of Capital City Sports. Be sure to check us online at capitalcitysports.blip.tv for all of our exclusive online content.
We're also available on iTunes. Just search Capital City Sports and download it to your iPod.
For our entire crew, I'm Ed Cahill.
And I'm Taniqua Penix. Have a great weekend. We'll see you here next week at 8.